and down into his mouth, he thinks twice about going and doing that to another human being. Because that person exercised defensive force because the bully had no right to do what he was doing. And it does matter who starts it. If a bully comes up to me and says, give me all your money, and I smash his face with all the force I can muster and bust his nose and blood is splattering everywhere, he thinks twice about continuing to come at me. And I had the right to do that. The problem is not enough people understand that. And they'll say you did something wrong for smashing in the face or the head of a bully. When in fact, that person initiated the violence and all that was responded with was defensive usage of force to stop the act. People need to understand that this is a right. This is a right. No one has a monopoly on being able to use defensive force. And people need to build the courage to start to understand we have this right. And that when we are accosted by a bully, that right has to be exercised. The bully first, I feel, needs to be told no, first and foremost, and that their action is wrong. And then if they don't stop, then the option to use defensive force has to be looked at. So the point here is, in slide number 74, is we need to start saying no, first of all. Get ideologically involved. That's the first step. Make it clear this is wrong and I'm saying no, and I'm not going to listen to your coercion. I'm not going to accept your coercion. The word no is the lost word of Freemasonry. That is what Freemasons have called the lost word. They call it the lost word because this is something that people aren't using. They're not saying it. It's not something that is being used. The right to say no. When somebody is telling you, I'm going to coerce you and make your will conform to mine, you have to say no. You're not going to coerce my will. You have no right. This isn't a human right for you to do. And if you don't have that right, no one has that right to do that. I don't care how many people you get together and call it government and do whatever kind of a, mystical ritual you're going to do to, and sign paperwork and say, now this person is bound to do what I tell them. No, it's not true. No, it's not true. Rights that don't exist for an individual don't exist for a group of people. You cannot create a right out of a wrong. Coercion, the initiation of coercive force, is a wrong. You can't turn that into a right by writing it down. See, and that's why it's called writing. Writing. I'm making this into a right. People don't even think about the words. I'm writing this. You're saying the same thing. The word right. When you're saying W-R-I-T-E, you're saying R-I-G-H-T. Phonetically, the sound is the same. I'm writing this down. So what somebody's hearing is I'm making this into a right because now it is written. It is right-in. It has been made into a right. People don't even think about the simple usage of words with the same sounds and how that goes into the subconscious mind. That's how lawmakers play their word magic. They want you to think that they're making this into a right. It's a wrong and no one has the right to take this action individually. Well, we're writing it. We're making it into a right. We need to develop the courage quickly to use the lost word before it comes down to a small group of people who are going to have to use the last word. And the last word is, or the last words, I should say, are Molon Labe. Come and take it. Because the whole thing is, these people think they're going to keep coming and trying to take our rights. And at some point, the people who do have the courage, like they did in 1775 and 6, are going to have to stand up and say, no, you're not going to take our rights, even if we have to use defensive force and possibly even give our lives to stop you from doing it. And once again, I say this over and over, all my work is to try to avert that disaster. Because it will be a disaster for both sides, not just one side. And the people will win. The people will win that confrontation, just like they have before over and over and over again in the past. The police and military who think that they're going to win that confrontation should just look into past history and find out what happened. Because police have always been on the wrong side of history. They don't understand that. They've always been the bad guys. They've always been co-opted by the state to do immoral activity, and then eventually that gets put down, and these people get put in their place, physically, at some point. And then history always records that these were the people who were the immoral people who did immoral acts against their fellow human beings and had to be stopped. And they don't understand that. They think they're the good guys. They think their institution is the good guy. And it's not the good guy. It's always been the bad guy. It's always been the villain throughout history. All you have to do is read history, and you'll understand that. Again, that's why it is called a police state, and not a politician state, a banker state, a lawyer state. It's not called any of those things. It's called a police state. There's a reason it's called a police state, because police, once again, are the people who are on the wrong side of history who make that eventuality occur. Police are the ones who are ultimately responsible. It is them who take the action. The people themselves wouldn't take that kind of coercive action. They want to be generally left alone. Unfortunately, ideologically, they're so messed up that they are supporting violence. Most of them would never do that themselves, but they're supporting it unknowingly, thinking that that's necessary. But the police are always the ones who are ultimately responsible. They share the lion's share. They take the lion's share of the moral culpability because they're the ones who are actually taking the action. The person who is the most morally culpable is the one who takes the action. So I don't want to see it have to come down to the last word, or the last words, as I've called it. But, slide number 76 shows that I'm getting prepared if it comes to that. I will be ready if that's what happens. I'm not going to be caught with my pants down and not have the ability to defend myself. And I would suggest that everyone should prepare. Everyone should have some level of preparedness for if a situation like the First American Revolution happens and it goes hot. I don't think it should have to do that, though, because we need to influence other people's mind and behavior by continuously speaking the truth to them so that they will stop doing this immoral behavior that they're taking under orders. We have to reach the minds of the order followers to prevent bloodshed from occurring in America. And once again, I'll say it over and over again, that's what this entire show has been about. Trying to avert that nastiness that is guaranteed to happen if these people continue to follow their orders. It's guaranteed. They're the ones who are making it happen. They will be the ones who are making a forceful altercation have to take place because they're initiating the violence. And people are only going to take so much violence before they rise up and act in a defensive capacity. And then once that starts, it's going to be very difficult to stop it. And they all know it. They're all running scared because they're backed into a corner because they look at it. Their lives are so meaningless to them that they have just put everything, that they're so identified. They're so attached to what they do. They think this is all I can ever do, that I can never stop doing this and do something else because they know how uneducated they are. I'm not trying to say this even as an insult to police, but they know deep inside, they know how stupid they are. And actually, let me take that back. They're not stupid. They're ignorant. There's a difference. Stupidity means that you don't have the capacity to understand. You actually are, something is inherently damaged and broken inside the brain, and there's the actual capacity to learn is not present. And I would say that isn't what police are. They're just ignorant. They're ignoring all the information that is out there about the truth, about natural rights. They don't want to learn it. They look at that as hard work. And that's harder to them than doing all of this coercive, compelling, restraining stuff that involves all this physical activity. They'd rather do all of that work than actually do the work that would be required to read, to learn, to understand something philosophically. They look at that as scary and frightening because somewhere along the line they got into their mind that they're incapable of understanding that stuff. And that's traumatic to them. They've always been looked at as, and look, there's some people who have a modicum of intellect in the police departments, obviously. But the whole point is they don't have true intelligence. They don't have big picture thinking. They have not integrated the feminine part of the mind, which involves creativity and intuition and deep understanding of patterns. That doesn't come from intellect, as we've already seen earlier in this presentation. So these aren't intelligent people. They have the capacity to reach intelligence, but their brain right now is not functioning properly. They're so in left brain imbalance that they're ruled by the R complex of the brain. And from the R complex, you're not going to do any higher order thinking. They need healing over time by taking in proper information. It's no different than getting off of a crap food diet and over time generating health by putting the correct nutrients into the body. The same is true for the brain. You need to get off of the poison information and the brainwashing that you've been receiving and get on to positive and truthful information about what actually is going on around you and within you, in your own mind, in your own brain, what's going on. That's what real intelligence is, being able to understand those patterns. That's what consciousness is. And they don't have consciousness. They are unconscious. And in their unconsciousness, they will be making the unpleasant situation. They already are making it. They're generating it and don't even know it. They're creating something that is going to be extraordinarily horrific for them and everyone else in their unconsciousness. They are unconsciously creating that situation and don't even know it. Which is why it is up to us to forcefully speak this to everyone. Use the force of voice and speak this to everybody that you can, especially police, because them and their family are going to be particularly at risk if they continue to push and push and push and push and push. And I don't want to see that eventuality occur. But that's what they're going to be creating. They don't understand that they are not going to win a war against the American public. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. And the people who are so thinking that, oh, the police and military are so big and bad and they would put down a rebellion, you don't even understand where the sentiment is. I'm telling you, just go to some gun shows and just listen to what the sentiment is. It's terrible. It's just terrible where people's heads are at. I mean, the people in this country are armed for war. Believe it. Believe it. America is a powder keg right now. Especially after all this nonsense that went down with Sandy Hook and then them subsequently trying to pass all that gun legislation. I mean, people's tempers are at an all-time high. It's not a good situation in America at all. And the police are not making it any better. They're exacerbating it, completely exacerbating it. So let's look at some ancient examples of these two principles combined, the sacred feminine and the sacred masculine principles combined. In the Mayan and Aztec tradition, there was the concept of the feathered serpent. I'm on slide number 77. He was called Kukulkan in the Maya tradition. He was called Quetzalcoatl in the Aztec tradition. And he was a feathered serpent, a serpent with the feathers all over him, like a bird. Okay, because Coatl means serpent, and the Quetzal was a bird. So you combine those, Quetzalcoatl, it's a feathered snake, or a snake that like flies like a bird. Okay, so this concept of the serpent combined with the bird is the sacred masculine principle, the serpent that will be ready to strike if necessary, combined with the bird, which flies high, free. It's the sacred feminine principle, like the dove. Okay, it's feathered. It's a gentle surface. On the surface, it's very gentle and soft and smooth and soothing, like feathers. So that's what is displayed to the outside world. You're completely covered in the feather of the bird or the dove. Okay, if you want to look at it as a dove bird. The Quetzal wasn't a dove, but I like to look at that as the sacred feminine symbology, which is the dove, as we'll see. I think the Gnostics impressively portrayed it, as I'll show in the next slide. But in the Mesoamerican traditions, this represented the sacred masculine principle of self-defense, the serpent, being completely enrobed and covered in the sacred feminine principle of non-aggression. And it's a beautiful symbol, if you really understand what the symbol means. This means at all times and places you're exercising the non-aggression principle unless violence is used, and then the whole being is a snake, is a serpent that is poised and ready to strike. Because you will exercise the self-defense principle if accosted with violence. The concept of the two pillars and having to hold on to both pillars was expressed in the South American tradition at Tiwanaku. This is an ancient civilization, far older than even the Mesoamerican traditions in Central America and Mexico. And I believe it's in Bolivia, if I'm not mistaken. I could be incorrect about that, but I think that's where Tiwanaku is. And here you see their sun king, Viracocha, and he has the two pillars. The two pillars, one in the left hand, one in the right hand. He's bridging them. He's standing in between them because he's the enlightened one. You have the rays of the sun coming out of his head. The two pillars of enlightenment. He's the sun, the light, the solar deity. And he has the pillars, the sacred masculine and the sacred feminine pillar. That's what enlightenment consists of, understanding both of those principles, the sacred feminine principle of non-aggression, don't initiate coercive force against your fellow man and woman, and the self-defense principle. If coercive violence is used against you, you have a right to defend yourself with force if necessary. So, great symbols that illustrate the very concept that I've been talking about in this section. Let's look at image number 78. The Gnostics also portrayed this symbol in a form of a yin-yang. You have the serpent and the dove. The serpent and the dove. The serpent is the sacred masculine principle, the right to self-defense. The dove is the sacred feminine principle, the non-aggression principle. And they're formed in a circle like a yin-yang. This is my favorite depiction of this dual concept of the sacred feminine combined with the sacred masculine. So the dove is the symbol of the spirit, and the snake is the symbol of matter. And it's showing that they are intertwined. They are together. Neither one is, in superiority. The serpent, the dove, represents, again, the sacred feminine non-aggression principle. Do not initiate harm. He flies in the sky. It's a high consciousness. To understand the sacred feminine principle is a high form of consciousness. Therefore, that's why it's depicted above. The serpent is a practical matter of fact philosophy. The self-defense principle is about keeping your feet on the ground. Don't fly off into such a spiritual daze by being so right-brained and balanced that you will not defend your physical body, which is the vehicle for the expression of consciousness. Your thoughts, emotions, and actions take place within and through the body. Therefore, it is the vehicle for the expression of consciousness. And as such, it's the vehicle for the growth and experience of the spirit. So that should not be ignored. And therefore, the serpent is included in that sacred union and that sacred dance, because it represents the sacred masculine principle that should not be abandoned. The ability to defend yourself when you are accosted with violence. In the Hermetic tradition, this is a movie picture on the right-hand side of a movie called The Man from Earth, which is a great movie, by the way. But I chose this to depict the Hermetic concept of the stellar man. The stellar man in the Hermetic tradition is the awakened and enlightened being. And it doesn't mean just man, woman, the stellar being, let's call it, okay? The stellar being has their head in the stars, in the high consciousness, but their feet on the ground. They have not abandoned practicality. They have not abandoned common sense in the real physical world, because they understand there's no separation between the physical and the spiritual domains. They are one. And they act as a bridge between the two. And I think that's, whether that's the intent of the makers of this movie picture, I think it illustrates the concept. The stellar man stands upon the earth, but his head is in the stars. Once again, he's grounded. He's practical. He understands the importance of the physical world and the physical body, and doesn't look at them as inferior to the spiritual. But he has his head in the spiritual domain, because he understands that that we are actually all one, that everything is an expression of the one. So he gets that, but he operates on the ground. He does his work on the ground in the physical world, and doesn't ignore the physical and say that, it's subservient to the spiritual. No, it's about taking the spiritual knowledge and bringing it down to the earth, where it can be used, where it can be put into practice, where it can be put into effect in our lives. So these are great symbols that illustrate these points of the sacred masculine and feminine principles coming together, and also the physical world and the spiritual world being one and the same. So let's move on to New Age deception number 6. The watered-down version of the laws of attraction. This is slide number 79. The watered-down version of the laws of attraction, as propagated by things like The Secret, that tells you have to just think about it, hold an emotion, and it'll come to you. It's all removing the sacred masculine component of action. That action is required in the real world to make happen, to manifest what you're going to manifest, what you want to manifest. It's all based on service to self too, as I talk about in slide number 80. It's about, what do you want for you? You want that new job, you want that new car, you want that new house, you want that new relationship. It's all about self-service, largely. Overwhelmingly, I really should say. Not even just largely, but overwhelmingly. It's about looking at only your microcosmic situation. It never talks about how do you want to influence people's mind and behavior in a big way so that they will stop acting in a capacity of coercion and violence, and supporting that and thinking that is okay to allow to just continue on unchallenged. It never gets into anything like that. It never gets into how we are creating our reality on a mass scale, in the aggregate. No, it talks about, it's trying to give you this notion that you're creating your reality individually, that you're attracting violence to you, No, I'm not attracting. Someone actually had the nerve to tell me that we attracted that situation to ourselves. Really? Really? No, ignorance attracted that situation to us, not our ignorance, because we know what our rights are. The ignorance of society, of other people who abandon common sense and morality. That's what attracted that situation to us. Make no mistake about it. It was not us. We're doing what is right and doing a duty to inform people about what is wrong and how they're being taken. So don't give me the bullshit, which is exactly what it is, that somehow I attracted that situation. No, the ignorance of other people attracted that situation, and its prevalence in society, the prevalence of that ignorance in society. Okay? That's like saying the Jews attracted the situation that happened to them in Nazi Germany. Yeah, they attracted the gas chambers to themselves. I mean, people who think this way are total dunces. Total dunces. And that's just how it has to be said. Because they bought a total lie about how the laws of attraction operate. A total lie. That's put there by dark occultists to get you to think of as the victim as the perpetrator. And there is such a thing. There are victims and perpetrators. There are people who are doing things that are bad to other people. Get over it. It's not just an experience. No, it's a wrongdoing. It's an injustice that should not be allowed to stand and continue. So get over your new age bullshit of it's just an experience, and those people attracted that to themselves. Whatever, people. I mean, really, this is how destroyed someone's mind is, that they accept this nonsense? Really? I mean, hopefully there's people out there with a little bit of common sense still that can understand how much total trash these teachings are. Trash. And they have nothing whatsoever to do with the real laws of attraction. The real laws of attraction are natural law, which are never spoken of once, in any aspect of the teachings of the so-called laws of attraction in the New Age movement. It's never mentioned. You want to know why? Because that's the deepest occulted information, and the New Age movement has no idea that it even exists. Because they've bought the occultist agenda, unknowingly, to hide the truth about natural law as the real laws of attraction, and they're peddling this total, utter bullshit version, which is exactly what it is. Total bullshit based in ego. As I show on slide number 81. It's all about the self, service to self. That's it. And ultimately, it's bullshit. So, let's offer a correction and try to get people to understand how the real laws of attraction operate. And again, this is what the whole New Age seminar, the whole natural law seminar is going to be about. I guess this is the New Age seminar right now, teaching people what the New Age movement really is. You're in the New Age seminar right now, a mini seminar on the deceptions of the New Age. The natural law seminar is going to explain about how the real laws of attraction operate. So let's get into this. Of course, the New Age movement's variation of the laws of attraction do not include action. They leave action out of the equation. Once again, this is the suppression of the sacred masculine. They all constantly talk about thoughts, holding a thought in your mind, a vision in your mind, and then feeling an emotion about it. But they leave out the action part. That alone is not going to make anything change in the real world. Get over it. Sorry, that's not how it works. You need to take action to put into effect what you're holding in your mind and in your emotional self. Action is required to make change happen in the world. It doesn't just automatically happen because you want it to. The real law of attraction is natural law, on slide number 84 now. And my working definition for natural law is the universal, non-man-made, binding, and immutable conditions that govern the consequences of behavior. We've talked about this endlessly on this show. I'll just briefly go over this. Universal. It exists everywhere in creation. There's nowhere it is not operating. It's non-man-made. That means it is inherent to creation itself. Man didn't make up these laws. Creation made these laws. They're boundary conditions to the universe. Binding. That means they're operating at all places, all times. You are bound by them, whether you understand them, agree with them, know about them, or ignorant about them, it doesn't matter. Belief is irrelevant. They are binding. It's just like gravity. It doesn't matter how much you know about gravity, whether you believe it exists, you're bound by it. The end. Same thing with natural law. immutable. That means they cannot be changed. They weren't put into effect by man, therefore they cannot be changed by man. They're not negotiable. They are, you're bound by them, it's unchangeable, and that's it. They govern the consequences of human behavior. These are boundary conditions that govern what actually occurs as a result of what free will decisions we make and then what actions we take as a result of those decisions. That's how natural law operates. And again, the seminar will be going into this very in depth, giving many examples and many related works for people to study as well. So the expressions of natural law, which we've talked about, and I'll go through these quickly, are a positive expression and a negative expression. When we work with a certain polarity, and again, this is on slide 85, when we work with a certain generative polarity, either the positive one or the negative aspect, we're going to eventually create a specific result in our lives. If we work with the positive expression,